So your new Muslim friend comes up to you and says to you, is it permissible for me to attend the funeral of my non-Muslim relative? What are you going to say? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The issue of attending the janazah or the burial of a non-Muslim is a matter which the scholars classically have differed over. And before I actually give the rulings, I want to explain some phrases and some terms. The word janazah is a very interesting phrase because in Arabic we all refer to it in a very kind of complete fashion. Did you go and pray the janazah? Did you go and follow the janazah? Have you got the janazah? Have you seen the three phrases? Actually, in the first one, did you go and pray the janazah? So the janazah here therefore means the prayer. Did you go and see the janazah? You're now talking about the pier itself and it being carried. Did you go and attend the janazah? Now it's being used to describe the entire funeral. Did you carry the janazah? So now it's referring to the body itself in its actual specific form. Are you going to be at the janazah in the graveyard? So now it's become the burial itself. So I want to say that in Arabic, the word janazah takes on all of these different meanings depending upon the context. We need to therefore be very accurate when we're asking about what the ruling is concerning something, especially with respect to non-Muslims. Now, I just want to take it bit by bit because, of course, death is a very difficult and painful moment for all people, regardless of religious, because regardless of your differences in faith. It's something which is personal, and a person who loses their mother or their father, Muslims have to be there for them and they have to console. It's one of the greatest of charitable acts to be there for your brother or sister in need. It doesn't matter the faith of the person. I mean, this is a human issue, and you need to be consoled and you need to look after and support your brother or sister by looking after them and by giving them food and by giving them material and physical and financial support and everything that they need. And there is a very clear manner, and I talk a lot about this in my own classes with respect to the fiqh of janaiz and the fiqh of death and so on, that condolences and consoling someone is an art, and you mustn't be all awkward about it. You got to be natural and not say stupid things because, like, you'll get over it, or don't worry, he had a good innings and all this kind of nonsense. This is a time where a person is hurting and they just want to, and they just need to know that there's someone there for them, and that and just be honest. Don't try to make up things and say things for the sake of just saying things. Now, there are some guidelines, of course. It is not permissible to say, just because out of trying to condole the other person, that your father is in Jannah, for example, and they died upon what was apparently their last word was the words of kufr, or the deen of kufr, or another religion. So you cannot say, just for the sake of keeping the other person happy, a statement of kufr, which is to say that this person's in paradise, or they're in a better place, for example, or rest in peace, for example. We don't know about that. We don't want to deny or go against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, which is the punishment for kufr or whatever. There's no need to open that door. We don't want to judge. We don't want to put ourselves at risk. No need to get ourselves involved in that mess. So condolences and consolation is very important, and we want to support our people at that time. And I don't just mean Muslims, I'm also all new Muslims, I mean non-Muslims as well. It's important to console them too. Maybe the person that you're giving dawah to, they're the one who have lost someone, and then of course it becomes a more generic issue of consoling. So this is something which is part and parcel of the bereavement or the grieving process, which you can be part of. The next aspect of the death process is the janazah in terms of the preparation of the body. Now, the preparation of the body actually is quite similar with respect to how Muslims and other faiths approach it, except that, of course, there are some differences. So the mortician is all about getting the body in a very, very clean first, in terms of washed and then made up state, nice clothes and then makeup and all this kind of stuff. and they will do certain things to the body which are unacceptable Islamically, because as the Prophet ﷺ said, that when it comes to actually dealing with the dead body, then the way that we treat it in terms of physically is like what it would be to a live body. So in terms of the manner that we handle it, so there's a whole different ethos in the way that we approach it. And it's not permissible to put on these forms of makeup and this and that and so on and dress it in clothes, in actual fact, unless we have no shroud. But in the Islamic tradition, we have to get hold of shrouds, either 3 or 5 cloths, depending on male or female, and make sure that the body is completely washed and completely covered according to the rules of Janazah. That's not the time for this now. I want to say to you that if you are attending the washing and the preparation of the body, this is something which is permissible. And I mean that of a non-Muslim. It is permissible to attend that, because this is a physical process, it's a cleaning process. It's something, there's few things that you might not agree with, but it's something which you can attend, especially if the family are expecting you to be there. But the real reason that you can attend is because there's no religious act of worship associated with it. Remember that, the religious act of worship. You see, janaiz for us and funerals is a religious process. We pray over our dead. We make a dua for the seeking of forgiveness for that person. We want to send them along in the best way. We want to be very, very quick. The Prophet ﷺ said that if a person is good, then we want to make sure that they get they're not delayed, not even 1 second before the khair that they're going to get, i.e. Jannah. So we want to rush into this whole process. Is a process that we're rewarded for. The ghusl itself, the prayer, and the more people that come to it, the hurrying along with the body as quick as possible, and then the burial according to the sunnah in a very simple way, where everything else is removed from the grave, nothing goes in, no metals, no nothing, very simple, very straightforward. And even the way that the body is buried with respect to in a coffin or not. We don't have coffins. We keep our bodies in a lahad, which is in a niche, either in the middle of the grave or in an L shape, in the niche of the L shape, as opposed to the Christian way, which is just to put it in the body, just put the body in the grave in a coffin, and then we will make dua for the person. And then it doesn't have to be done in a congregational way, but if an imam is there or someone is there and they ask for a congregational dua, that's something which is acceptable. But the Prophet ﷺ said that your brother is now, ask for your brother steadfastness, because al-an yus'al, he is being questioned by the angels. So we need to make dua that Allah makes him strong. And so there's a dua for this person. It's an entire religious process, something which is restricted by Sharia, by Islamic law, and rewarded if you do it correctly, and it is a punishable act if you do it incorrectly. And so, if you attend another process which is done to another religion's conditions and another religion's guidelines, then you are partaking in an act of worship which is an act of kufr. It's actually very, very serious. And so the guidelines to understand this issue is to identify in the entire funeral and burial process those acts which are religious by nature. Because we have enough in our sunnah as a tradition to show that the Prophet ﷺ allowed the attending of various aspects of the burial. So for example, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and said to him that your uncle, the misguided one, he has died. Meaning his own father. He's referring to his own father, who of course was the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Talib. And he said he has died. The Prophet ﷺ, and he died of course as a non-Muslim. And the Prophet ﷺ told him, go and bury him. So he did tell him to go and take care of the burial himself. We know, for example, also narrated in the Musannaf of Ibn Abi Shayba, we know that the Prophet ﷺ, some of his companions, they attended the burial of al-Harith ibn Abi Rabi'ah. She was a Christian. And so that was attended by some of the companions. We know that a number of the tabi'een and the imams of the early the founding fathers, they also allowed for people to attend the funerals of those who were non-Muslim. What's the key factor here? They were in control. They were the ones who were doing the burying. They were the ones who were controlling and calling the shots. They were not partaking in any religious ritual. They were not part of any convocation or any kind of blessing or any sort. You see, this is the problem. You will often see that the Christian form or another religious form will have various religious aspects. So the most common one, for example, is the service. In the Christian faith, there will be a gathering, one at the house, which is a more light-hearted affair, and then one a formal one, which is a blessing. That reading, the reading of tributes and people coming up and making their statements, and the priest then actually sending a blessing in the gathering. That actual process where everyone is asked to come, that service is a religious event. People don't think it because it's in a church, everyone's sitting, chilling out on pews, everyone mixing, whatever, whatnot, and everyone believes that the religious event is the actual burial where the priest then says, let's say a few words, let's say something, and they send them away and they bury them in this kind of way, and then they start, their process. No, you're wrong. Actually, that is religious, and this is religious as well. So how do we deal with that? Because every non-Muslim relative, and that's the reason you're there because you're sad, but you wouldn't need to see a burial to solve your sadness. There are other ways to be able to deal with the problem than having to attend a burial. The real reason you're there is because you know that family members are going to have an absolute, they're going to have a heart attack if you don't attend. They're going to think, what is this? This is your mother, this is your father, this is your uncle, and your religion is so hard-hearted and callous that it's going to disrespect the dead. And I want to make it very clear that Islam never disrespects the dead, who whatever faith they're from. And we have a number of narrations where the Prophet ﷺ showed that respect to those who had passed away when the bodies were being driven through. Just like we see in our culture today, when you see the long train of cars led by the specialist one, which is carrying the body, and then the rest of them and the rest of the traffic all slows down. Everyone shows respect for that moment. This is something which Islam established many years ago, and we recognize it regardless of the faith of the person who is inside that car. We don't know. So respect is something which we will show. But the point that we stop is the actual religious process. So what I'm about to explain to you now is something that only you know best how to pull off. If you're that new Muslim, or that person who is in this scenario where they have to attend this funeral of your relative, then you've got to try and play it by ear. I'm going to share with you what I've done, and I have many non-Muslim friends, and I've attended the deaths or the funerals of the deaths of some close friends of mine who are non-Muslim, and I knew their family as well. And I used to have an employee who used to work for me, and I remember she passed away, and I knew the rest of the family, and I had to try and work out the best way of doing it. And then there was a service and there was a burial. And what I know is that the family were not that close to me so that they were expecting me to be super full on and everything, but they certainly expected me to turn up to the service. So that's the first thing, knowledge of understanding your expectation. If it's a relative, you are expected to turn up to a lot more than just one kind of thing. I know that if I enter that church hall and I'm part of that blessing, I have partaken in an act of worship which is completely unacceptable. So what did I do? I was hanging around the exit area. I was there. I got there very early before people came, and I was greeting people outside. You know how there's a gathering and then the people before they go in. So I made it very clear to everyone that I was there. Then I disappeared. People are not always looking for where you are, whatever, whatnot. And I was around and about and outside, and and I don't want to kind of make it out I'm tricking people, but I want you to think about this. Often you see this, that a service is going on and people emotionally can't handle it, and they go outside, right? And they go out for a bit of fresh air, or to just think about it, or they're very sad. No one thinks that person is boycotting what's happening inside. People are not sure, are you really sad, or they might come and condole you and whatever. And, that's something which is quite natural. And I think that we should play upon that principle as well. That you're showing your respects and you wait outside and you're not chatting on your phone or doing something disrespectful, but you're sitting there in contemplation. I sat down on a bench, and people, when they would walk past, they know that I'm here for this reason. And so no one questioned me at all. And then when people come out, I'm making sure that I'm there again, going up to the family. I'm saying that, I'm still here for you, you know what. And they're not looking, they don't really care so much was I sitting through the process inside. They respect the fact that I turned up beforehand. We saw them after as well. And if they don't see me at the burial, they don't see me at the burial. It's no major issue. And I think that the same principle should be applied. We don't want to be present when the words are being said and the praises are being sung and the kufr which is being spread. We don't want to be part of that religious process. But we can still be part of the process in a whole without endorsing the actual religious act of worship. And when it comes to someone, for example, that's very close to you, and you are expected to be at the graveside when the final act is delivered, then that's a little bit more difficult, but the same principle applies. So you can attend, show yourself around, and then just like everyone else, you kind of walk off into another corner or keep yourself to the side so you're not hearing anything or seeing anything as part of the religious process itself. And then once he stops and then the body is lowered and people are throwing earth on or whatever, then you can be there and you can be part of the physical process of the putting the earth onto the actual grave and sealing the grave. You can be part of that. It's the religious act of worship and the kufr which is stated from sources which are unacceptable, which is what you have to avoid. What I'm saying is that actually any intelligent person can navigate these problems very, very easily. Genuinely, I'm saying that. I'm not trying to wash this under the carpet. I've been there, done that. So I'm not even gonna, I don't even need to kind of try and make this up. I've seen it, done it a number of times, and other people can as well. It is permissible to go and bury the dead. You can be part of that process. You can even control that process, but you just need to avoid the religious acts of worship, whether it's a cremation, whether it's a service, a blessing, a half blessing, a full blessing, whether it's a Hindu process. Those actual acts of worship and haram are what you avoid, and those things which lead up to it and after it, and the consolation and condolences and the support, the love and respect and genuine concern afterwards, that's what people are going to judge you upon, not the little acts of worship which they don't really look out for you anyway. I hope you understand what I've said, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.